mess. It's a mess. And so we brought that up to them, and they told us that they had notified the contractor, and that was, they walked away from any answers for us. So I think it's interesting the way they've treated us with that, and we've tried to make people aware of it, but we're not getting the big gun responses that we should be getting.
Have you engaged the city engineer?
Oh yes,
he's the one that ought to be, because he talks their language, or ought to know it.
He at the last meeting we had with the city engineer, we pointed out that they didn't finish the pipe where it ends and enters the pond, that there's no collar, and then there was some discussion about the sinking around the pipe. Somewhere in that area, that Ed roped it off, but we can't run our grass, our lawn people through there, because there's a 1.5 foot deep hole around that pipe in sink areas. So we've roped it off. But the engineer said he was going to contact them.
Charlie is with us tonight. I can elevate him and let him give us an update on that if he has anything at this point. Charlie, are you able to give us an update on that pipe at GHP?
No, I did the same thing that I think Harry and Ed did, reached out to the engineer, Davis, Bowen, and Friedel for the Cape and Lopez School District, and they were going to follow up with the contractor. I can follow back up again with them. I will say that it's just a sediment and erosion control device right now. It's not actually a stormwater management pond yet. So if there is any kind of anti-seep collar required, which I don't remember that from the plans, you know, that would be put in when it becomes a stormwater management pond nearer the end of the project. But I will follow up with them.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Marty, do you want to talk about the tree program?
Sure. So our grant project this year has begun. We removed 8 failing trees on West 4th Street. The stumps have been ground out. Thank you, Janice, for following up on that. In the fall, we will plant 10 trees in that area along West 4th Street. On April 24th, Janet and I participated in a tree planting in Milton. That was the final step in becoming tree stewards for the state of Delaware. The planting was along a Rails to Trails bike path. The mayor of Milton got it organized to begin with, and then the state forestry got involved. Janet and I guided volunteers to plant the trees correctly, including you know, the right depth and dealing with circling roots, that sort of thing. The whole team planted about 100 trees that day, and Janet and I are now official certified tree stewards. On April 30th, we had an Arbor Day planting in Zwanendale Park. We planted 2 little magnolias, and they look great. Mayor Ted Becker was there, and he even insisted on digging one of the holes himself for one of the trees. In May, I participated in a walk through Great Marsh Park with the state forester, along with Janet and Rodney, and we discussed the trees and potential future efforts. I'll leave it to Rodney and Barry to discuss that further. I appreciate that the city has a summer hire using the water truck that the city gave us a few years ago to water the trees. We have really needed it this year so far. And Janet's supervising, thank you. We are also watering the new holly trees at the library and trailhead. I'm not sure they're technically trees. I haven't tagged them, but we're watering them because we want them to thrive. I think they're outside of the irrigation area, aren't they? Yeah, yeah, okay. So if we water, they're holly trees. If we water them for a year or two, they'll be fine. Spotted lanternfly. I know you've all heard me talk about it before, but you know, it's an invasive species. It was first discovered in Pennsylvania, and where it's settled in a big way, it's a monstrosity. It destroys all kinds of trees and vines and other plantings, peach trees and you know, grapevines and all kinds of things. Plus, it's obnoxious. We don't have it in this part of Delaware yet, but the tree of heaven, Ailanthus, it's Ailanthus. I had to teach my computer how to spell it. Is an invasive non-native tree that some people say the spotted lanternfly has to have it to reproduce. Some people say they just prefer it to reproduce. In any event, all the guidance that's coming out of this invasion is to get rid of your tree of heaven if you can. We have identified several stands of it in the city limits. There are a few in Great Marsh Park. There's one next to the beach in what turns out to be Denrec land. We reached out to Denrec and got approval, but we are going to get started trying to eradicate the Ailanthus. Probably that'll start this fall. This is an area where, according to all the research I've done and the Penn State recommendations, you do need application of certain pesticides. It's really hard to eradicate. It keeps coming up from the roots. And if you don't use a really limited application of certain pesticides, you're just not going to have any success. One of the techniques I've seen that has been very successful is you make some cuts in the bark near the base, and then you put limited amounts of the pesticide in those little cuts. So it's not like you're spraying all the foliage or anything. That's not what you do. So we're going to look into that further and work on that, because, you know, once you get spotted lanternfly, it's just a real bother. It's economically horrible, and it's messy, and anyway, so we're going to work on that this fall. The mayor has asked that we look into a location for what I'm calling the Council Grove. He would like to have dedication trees for retired council members. And Janet and I did a walkthrough of GHP Smith Park, and our recommendation is the area near the butterfly garden. There are trees there already. I had already gotten started kind of making a grove of that area. We have room for more trees, and it also has probably the best soil in the park for planting trees. There's a lot of soil in the park that's really rock hard and really difficult. But that's basically sandy soil there. There's a water spigot right there to help us with watering and so on. So there's also already there we have a Mayor Ford tree, a Mayor George H.P. Smith tree, and a tree for councilperson Stephanie DeSantis. So I think it's a good place to have more councilperson trees. I briefed councilperson Carolyn Jones on the tree program. Thank you, Carolyn. And I've continued doing tree tag maintenance, arbor scope updating, light pruning, and inspections. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Warren?
Marty, regarding the council trees near the butterfly garden in George H.P. Smith Park, when we planted the dogwood trees there, we hit some very hard clay, and I think even some hard pan. So
yeah, I know. Well, as I've explained to Harry many times, every time I put a shovel in GHP, I have different kind of soil, but of all the places, there's some patches there where some reasonable soil, but yeah, I know there. We'll just have to just check it as we go. Yeah. We've had to switch locations for a tree before because the place we wanted to put it, when we put the shovel in, it was a no-go. So, yeah.
Thank you, Marty. Any other questions or comments for Marty? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Kay, our beach commissioner.
I would say the beaches are in full swing. Yesterday was pretty darn peak. There's still a good amount of social distancing. Occasionally people forget. I didn't see any masks yesterday, I don't think. I think our lifeguards, from what I see, they're attentive, they're polite, they're good representatives of the city to anyone who goes to the beach. There was the weather radar installation on the 25th, is on the dune between beaches 1 and 2. And the mayor is working on getting a modem so that the Lewis Lions Club Snack Shack can fully use credit cards to charge, because so many people carry no cash. And then when they see what's offered, they want an umbrella, they want chairs, they want food. And so that will greatly help. And when they were cash only, they could raise $30,000, which 100% goes to local charity. So I feel this is a great thing for them, because it benefits everyone in the county. Our lifeguards will be working double overtime on July 4th. So hopefully everything will go smoothly, and with the fireworks being visible from more places, maybe the crush will be less right down on the beach, and it won't be, you know, as difficult as it was the first couple of years for them. And hopefully people will be more spread out. So that's basically it for because I'm going to be talking under new business. So far so good, I'd say.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Kay? Okay, thank you, Kay. I will now turn to Christine and Candace. So whoever would like to go first.
Christine, over to you, and I'll go next.
Sure. Okay. We don't have too much to report, actually, but we did meet in April 26th with Rich McGreal and Randy Boyth of the Lewis Junction Railroad and Bridge Association. And we just reviewed their proposed plan to place a rail car installation between the Margaret H. Rollins Community Center and the library. And of course, that is all pending an MOU with between DelDOT and the city. And it was, you know, the meeting was basically just an update from them. And that's all I have to report. Candace?
Okay. Stango Park has been quite busy with the concerts. They have been very well attended. A lot of good music there in the evenings that they're able to be there without weather interfering with them. The Children's Learning Garden has been a very active place. They just recently had their Strawberry Festival, and the Children's Learning Garden team posted some images on Facebook, and it looked like everybody was enjoying themselves there. Today, Storytime brought 54 children and 40 adults to the Children's Learning Garden vicinity for story time. So they're calling upon their volunteers to gather more people because of the huge response of people being there. There's also the walking book tour that is set up in Stango Park. The placards with the story from a book are adjacent to the trees, so they're not in the way of the mowing and all of the maintenance that needs to be done there. But it's a wonderful amenity, and a lot of folks are taking advantage of the children's programs there. Christine and I have been working on the research for tables and chairs for the patio area right behind the Margaret H. Rollins History Museum and Center. And we're still doing a bit of our due diligence on what we're going to settle on, but we're looking at polywood as the material for these, which would be durable and easy to clean and that sort of thing. And so once we get ourselves settled on the choice for that, we're looking for a wood colored. There's a teak color for the polywood that looks very attractive, but we're still doing our due diligence, and so we'll report back. But there, in the budget, there's a capital allotment of $4,500 for this project, and we are planning to be under budget and report later.
That's good.
Questions or comments for Candace or Christine before moving on? Okay, Barry, can you give us an update on Great Marsh Park?
Yes. I don't think we met since this last time. We had a state forester out at Great Marsh Park, and I think about four people toured the whole park with him. I know Rodney was there, Janet, and
I was there.
And Marty. I unfortunately set the whole thing up, but got sick that morning and could not attend. But it was a very fruitful meeting and tour. Eric gave everybody a good idea of what we could do, and also shared some of the resources that might be available for us to create and develop a master plan for the park. Then we also met just last week or 2 weeks ago with Bartlett, the arborist, and they walked around and helped us identify some of the invasive species, like the olive tree that's invasive, and that tree that Marty talked about, the tree of heaven or whatever it's called. I can't say the name, but and he also gave us some really good ideas about, as we manage the site, how to also keep in mind how to develop, how to manage it and develop the site at the same time, so that we're not, duplicating what we're doing. Like if we're removing species and we need to cut a trail into the woods, then that may need to be a trail that we're thinking about doing a walking trail for, whatever. So that's about it on Great Marsh Park. Rodney and I will continue to get together and develop a master plan. We need to go over goals and objectives and some kind of a mission for the park. That'll be the start, and then we'll, as we're managing things, we'll start to develop a plan, and ultimately that will obviously involve public meetings. Can't think of anything. Did I leave anything out, Janice? Anything else about the visit from the forester or Bartlett tree that is important to note?
Well, I think both Jim Maddox from Bartlett and Eric Berkentine, the state forester, were on the same path with us about taking the park in grids. It is a 66-acre park, very large, and kind of taking pieces of it, looking at what we have there, mapping out the undergrowth forests, the wet areas, any areas that have an abundance of invasive trees, and managing the selection of those for removal. And as you said, thinking about the visions for the park as we start to do those things. I do have access to GPS technology to be able to do some of that mapping. And then we can upload that into GIS. So I think that would be a good place for us to start. Right now, it's, as you know, Barry, being out there last week, it's very, very buggy. So I think, we have some time to talk about when would be a good time to do those. Also, it's going to be kind of tough to find the real wet areas because it's been so dry and hot lately. But I think that's our starting point. Rodney, I know you were with us with the forester. Is there anything that you wanted to add to that? You're muted.
It's important for people to understand that the land out there is kind of like a runaway train right now. It's been unmanaged at all, and therefore you're finding, you know, just all kinds of species, exotic and indigenous, that are kind of slugging it out. And what we need to do is kind of get it under control. And the first thing to do is to have some idea of what an inventory of existing conditions are. As Janet said, there are some lovely indigenous trees and stands of trees out there that we intend to identify and locate. And then you cannot go and identify and map every tree and every plant. That's just a waste of time. But what you need to do is you need to identify particular areas where, for example, it's really wet and you're very limited in what you can do, and it's very limited in what grows in that kind of a condition. And then you take them a block at a time rather than do the entire park at one time. It's divided into pieces. Let's take a piece at a time or two at a time and look at it and do this inventory and understand it to the point where we can then go in and begin to edit what's there. And edit is removing invasives and particularly aggressive plants, and then try and save the ones that are worth keeping. Barry and I were talking earlier about maybe asking the state and get involved, because the state has a person or more than one person who's a planner who specializes and does really nothing but trails. They design trails throughout the parks. And having trails in this would be a great way to insert the editing process. You don't want to just come in and knock everything down. And so if you know where you're going to have trails ahead of time, you could begin to have access into these wooded areas. And it's important for people to understand that, and then I'll stop lecturing, but it's important to have open spaces within the wood areas. The greatest diversity comes from edge conditions, not deep in the woods or out in the open field. It comes from the edge between the two. That's where you have the greatest number of birds, songbirds, everything. And so we want to create more edges. So we could go in and create open areas where the sunlight can come in. We maximize edges. That's going to be great for wildlife. It's also going to be great for the general public to be able to walk and explore and enjoy the park. So one thought we have is to get in touch with the state and see if they would help us out. I think they would do this. I know that the state trail planner was very much involved in the Botanic Garden down in Dagsboro. He went down there and laid out all the trails ahead of time in the woodland area. And so I think it would be helpful to get them involved, maybe do the same thing. And it doesn't mean that we're designing anything or making those kinds of decisions. It's just mean we're creating good access into this thicket. I mean, it's a thicket. You can't walk through it in some areas.
It is.
So we have to get it to where it's more manageable before we can start really planning it. Anyway, I'll stop.
Any questions for Barry or Rodney on that? Okay.
And then one other thing is the tennis courts. I should mention that they're due to be resurfaced. Do we have a date yet, Janet, on?
We do not have a date yet, no.
One of the issues with that is that we will have to close down the courts because the synthetic surface that we're using needs to be applied when it's warm. I forget what the temperature is. Originally, we were talking about doing it in the fall when we didn't have as much use, but that's not going to be possible. So unfortunately, we're going to have to close them down sometime this summer, I think. Right, Jen?
Thank you, Barry. Warren?
Mary Vessel's Park in 1812 Park. The patrons from Lewis and Bloom have been doing a great job taking care of the plants. Just as a point of interest, we have over 500 annuals planted at Mary Vessel's and over 900 at 1812 Park. The only thing that's a little slow growing are the caladiums. The soil temperature needs to be about 68 degrees or better before they really start growing. And we got a late start with them this year, and we had a cool May. So they're just beginning to show above the ground right now. Also in Mary Vessel's Park, Lewis and Bloom purchased a bench to go under the magnolia tree. Lewis and Bloom paid for the bench. Janet was very nice to order it, and it's been installed by the city and looks great.
And that was a replacement for a bench that was there that maintenance had taken to try and repair, and it kind of fell apart. So we thank Lewis and Bloom for their contribution to replace that.
That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Warren. Judy, I know this is your first meeting and you're getting up to speed. Is there anything that you'd like to report on?
I'm happy to be part of the group, and I'm looking forward to a project that was introduced when we had a meeting with Ed and Harry and yourself over at George H.P. Smith Park. And when we had our meeting there, we talked about possibly doing a can-do playground over by the library. And that's a playground that's used by everyone, but has special needs for disabilities and groups of all levels. I guess ages too can be involved. So I'm starting to research some ideas, and also I got in touch with Tom Talley from the Rotary up in Wilmington, because the Rotary in Wilmington was instrumental in building the Can-Do playground at Alapocas Run State Park. I think it was around 2005 or so. It's been a while. And I kind of wanted to see how the Rotary got it together to do this kind of a project, so that we might have some support from that community and maybe some other representatives to help with this, with the cost of it. But that's kind of where I've been looking. I try to ride my bike around to kind of get more familiar with the park areas. And we also talked about putting a new cover on a shade cover over at Canalfront Park. So I guess I'm kind of jumping around, but my mind is to get things done, and I'm hopeful that with everybody's support, it sounds great, because everybody works together, and I really appreciate that.
Great, thank you, Candace.
Judy, before you joined this evening, we had a brief conversation about the Can-Do Park, and one of the questions, if you could look at this in your due diligence, is the size of the park, sure. Because there's only 0.77 acres of city land adjacent to the library leased land, and we cannot use the library parking spaces for the use of the playground. And so it's important that the project be looked at as a standalone project, sustainable with parking for that use or that purpose. And I look forward to working with you. I know Christine is as well, but that's a piece of information that would be really critical to this question.
That's really important, because when I rode by and we had said somewhere near the library there, I thought, where does this go? Because actually there was a group of children and adults that were having a little, I don't know, they were actually, I don't know if they're talking about a book or something, but there was a group of people behind there, and I thought, it's not that big, and there might have been about 15 people, so we'll have to work on that size. Yeah, I will do that.
Be happy to work with you on that, Christine.
Yeah.
Terrific.
I just also in your research, if you could find out how many parking spaces that you would need for handicaps, handicap parking spaces, which obviously would take up more parking space as well.
Okay.
Just something to consider.
Terrific. I can do that. Okay. I have the name of some people that worked on other playgrounds in the city, so that's a good place to start there.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Lou, you want to talk about Zwannendale Park? What's going on?
Yeah, let me go. This is a two-month report, because obviously we didn't have a meeting in May. So I'll cover those 2 months. It dates all the way back to the city tulip dig. So we held the annual city tulip dig on April 27th, which again proved very successful in removing all the tulips that were not only in Zwannendale Park, but throughout all the parks. I had the fountain repaired because of poor spray performance. And I also had a leaking water faucet that was repaired by the street department. We prepared the park for the annual Lewis house tour, which was held on June 19th. And this is a big event for Zwannendale Park. And it's usually, the whole park is usually covered with vendors. Emptied the fountain basin twice during the past 2 months, scrubbed the basin sides of algae growth, and refilled the ponds, and then added algae retardant. So I usually do this once a month. Takes about a couple hours. The spring annuals were delivered on May 13th, but planning was delayed to the end of the month because of irrigation problems, actually startup. So this actually is a pretty big project by itself, but then we had to set up additional work teams during that 2 or 3 weeks to keep the plants watered in preparation for the planting itself. I took new councilwoman Carolyn Jones for an orientation tour of the park. We had planted 6 oak holly trees along the west border of the park. These were trees that were donated by Lewis and Bloom to the city from their winter pots displayed on 2nd Street. This project also was a little complicated because, again, after planted, I had to set up teams to actually keep these watered till the irrigation was in place. And then also during that 2 months, I had 4 additional work days to actually just do general cleanup and weeding and pruning. And that's it.
Okay, thank
you.
I can go
to the garden if you want.
Yeah, let's go have Rodney finish his report for Canalfront Park, and we'll go to the other reports and projects. Thank you, Lou.
You want me to begin?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
For Canalfront Park.
Canalfront Park. I just wanted to make sure everyone's aware. I think it'll be published for the city calendar, but Thursdays are the days that things happen there for public events. August 5th is the Rehoboth Children's Theater doing Hansel and Gretel at 6:30 in the evening. And there are Thursday concerts from 7 to 9 p.m. July 29th will be the 19th Street Band. August 19th, Comfort Zone, August 26th, the Funsters. And then Thursday, movies, which begin at dusk. July 22nd is Fly Away Home. August 5th is Shrek. And September 2nd is Racing Stripes. The other thing I wanted to ask is, I've heard some comments that, you know, the restrooms that are there down below the net house are kind of hidden away, and a lot of people don't know about them. And I wondered if we could put some signs or somewhere up where we could direct people there to let them know that there are restrooms available to the public. It seems like a good idea to me. I've had that request made from some people, and unless anyone objects, I'm not crazy about signs, but signs like that I think are necessary. And so is that something that the city handles? I mean, I think the Friends would certainly contribute and pay for them, but is that something that the city has very strict standards in terms of materials and graphics and things, and a contractor through a contract that's already on board? Is that the way that works?
I think that we would want to, I can talk with the maintenance department. And I think, Rodney, if we can get together with them and kind of talk about location, what makes, you know, where the signage makes sense, right. And it doesn't interfere with, you know, the beauty and integrity of the park. But you're right, you know, the restrooms, because we have the marina right there, you know, the people who are utilizing the marina know where they are, but other guests and visitors may not. So,
well, one of these comments came from the Overfalls people who asked if it's possible to have a sign over at the Overfalls directing people down to the net house if they need to use the restroom. And that seems to me just makes the city a more livable place.
If I remember correctly, I think City Council at one point had a process underway to look at the signage throughout the city, because as you know, and they want to make it more uniform. It was all connected up with the byways people too, to make it more uniform and appropriate and attractive and yada yada. So you should probably.
Yeah, they're looking at that now.
Yeah.
I think it was more like for bicycles and other amenities. I don't remember. Carolyn, you may know better than I.
No, it definitely was geared toward bikes and
right. And I don't remember and parking lots and bike corrals and whatnot. I don't know that, you know, pointing to restrooms was there, but we do have 3 public restroom facilities throughout the city at Canalfront Park, Mary Vessel's, and Zwannendale. So
well, it's something that should be looked at, so I'll bring it up in our meeting.
Right.
Thank you.
How about the Chamber of Commerce map? Also, I'm not sure what it has on it, but that Chamber of Commerce map they give away thousands of them.
Right.
And that could be a good place to sort of update where all the public restrooms are. Make sure people know, just sort of like the little sort of pocket parking areas too.
That's a good thought. Thank you, Kay. Christine, did you have
was that part of the wayfinding committee?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, the signage is
signage
part of the way. Yep.
Okay.
That's part of the wayfinding.
Thank you.
Anything else on Canalfront Park, Rodney?
Just to say that their next meeting is going to be July 13th, which I will attend and report on.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Barry, do you want to talk about the Public Art Committee?
We looked at the proposal and had a presentation by Sue, forget her last name, and the Public Art Committee.
Sandmeyer, Sue Sandmeyer.
Sue Sandmeyer approved it in concept with some conditions that were to be worked out after the meeting. And they're in the process of working out the conditions. One of the biggest concerns that the Public Art Committee and also the Harry and Ed had were the height of the panels. So that's all in the conditions and in the contract that we come up with for public art. We will have a report at the next meeting, or actually we meet on Wednesday. So that's all I have as far as.
Okay, thank you. And we have the Pickleball Facility Subcommittee. Is there an update, Rodney and Barry, on that, our last meeting?
Just that we're kind of running out of places to locate them. We investigated, I think, 6 or 7 different sites and have really exhausted a lot of the possibilities. I think there's 1 or 2 other sites that we need to address, and then by the next meeting we should have a report for the for this group. The committee was never intended to, go on forever and ever. We really just wanted to investigate the possibility of developing standalone pickleball courts and investigate what possible sites there might be available in and around the city. And that's kind of what we've done so far.
Okay. Anything to add to that, Rodney?
Yeah, I was disappointed, frankly, I'll be very honest about it, that we weren't able to find sites that seemed to be large enough. We needed a certain size to accommodate the courts. And if we had to provide our own parking, then that had to be in there also. We tried to, combine it with the library site, for example, and other places like that. It just didn't seem to work out. I think there's the last possibility I think we're still kind of looking at is maybe over in the west side of town, northwest, and maybe a university might be willing to discuss accommodating pickleball out there somewhere. And that kind of brings us back to the Great Marsh, because one might say, well, gee, there's all that land there. We can't do anything with that land until we have a master plan completed. That's what's in the way of that. It's a procedural holdup. And I think that's in the agreement between the city and the state. We're not allowed to do that. So it means that if that's the only alternative, then we need to get busy and see if we can't complete that master plan, and if it makes sense to even think of locating it over there somewhere. That remains to be seen.
Thank you. And Lou, update on the community garden?
Yeah, the gardening itself is in full swing right now. We've been harvesting our spring crops. This is mostly like lettuce and radishes and peas and spinach, and are now planting our summer crops. The hope is that probably we'll be able to start harvesting in that, like tomatoes and peppers and squash and so forth, in the next several weeks. Fundraisers is going well, even with the challenges of the COVID-19. Our April the 28th, we held a small fundraiser at the Dogfish Head Brewing and Eats restaurant and netted $554. If it wasn't for the virus, we would have probably tripled that because we get most of our fundraising at these eateries through lotteries. We participated in the Welfare Foundation DM24DE event, which resulted in $5,142. We were also successful in being awarded a grant of $1,400 from the Festival of Cheer organization. So year to date, we have accumulated $10,796 in contributions against a goal of $6,800. So we almost doubled our goal. We built 2 wooden benches, which were placed inside the garden. These were to serve as rest stations for the gardeners. We finalized the grass cutting specifications with the city, and it was agreed they would cut our lease plot the first and third Friday of every month. The bluebird houses that we built last year has finally attracted a nice colony of bluebirds. So you have to come out and take a look at them. We planted a flower bed at the entrance of the garden. A one-day workday is planned the first Saturday of every month to complete garden projects and help with garden maintenance. We also have lectures that are held every month for all kinds of things to teach the gardeners, primarily organic garden and how that takes place, all about pest and crop diseases and control, garden rules, compost procedures, donation harvesting, and scheduling of plantings. These really were not have really proven particularly helpful to the new gardeners. A large carton of fresh 2021 seeds were obtained from the Lewis Children's Learning Garden, and we distribute those free to our gardeners. And with the success of our garden and its typical growing pains, we're now reviewing our garden management organization to make sure and we make changes as necessary to ensure that we have long-range sustainability. And that's it.
Well, thank you. It's been a very active time in the parks, and you're all very busy. Thank you for all that you do. It's appreciated. Moving through the agenda, we're on old business D1, presentation, discussion, and possible action on the striping of the tennis courts for pickleball. So I just want to give a little history and timeline here. I hope you've all had an opportunity to review the minutes from the Mayor and City Council February 10th, 2020 meeting, as well as the renderings that were supplied by GMB of various layouts for the striping of pickleball courts on the tennis ball courts. But to refresh people's memories and just give a little history here, in January of 2020, the Parks and Recreation Commission held a workshop meeting Tuesday, January 14th at 6 p.m. To look at some of the draft drawings available for review. GMB engineers were able to give some background on the plan, followed by comments and suggestions from the public. There was no action taken that night. It was just listening to the public comments. And the regular meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission was held on January 27th, 2020. And on the agenda for that evening was discussion of review of the emailed comments and the January 14th, 2020 workshop comments for possible action and a recommendation to council regarding the layout. And I do remind everyone that this project is part of the DENREC ORPT Parks and Recreation grant. So there was action taken at that meeting. A motion was made to recommend to mayor and city council for consideration of keeping the 2 tennis courts with the 6 blended lines, 4 pickleball courts as presented in concept E. That motion was seconded. It did pass 7 yes votes and 1 no vote. So that brought us to the February 10th, 2020 Mayor and City Council, where Mayor and City Council made a motion which passed to accept the recommendation from Parks and Recreation Commission as presented, which again was to keep the current striping of the pickleball courts. As you're all certainly aware, it was shortly after that time that we were all thrown into the thrust of the COVID pandemic, and things halted. So we were picking up in late fall of 2020, kind of regrouping and looking at the project. And there was a discussion of decreasing the number of pickleball courts on the tennis ball courts. Rodney, Barry, myself, and the engineers with GMB had a meeting, and that brings us to where we are today. I know Charlie is still on with us, and I'm going to pull him up and have him help us walk through this this discussion. I've lost my cursor. Okay. So Barry and Rodney, if we can start the discussion as to the thought behind the layout of the 4 courts and why 4 courts versus the 6 courts. We did have the pre-construction meeting. We are going to start soon, although we don't have a date. So we do need to kind of finalize this. And if our recommendation is changing from January 27th to now, we will have to go back with another recommendation to mayor and city council.
So what you're saying is the current thing that was approved was for 6 courts?
That is what was the recommendation of the Parks and Recreation Commission at the January 27th, 2020 Parks and Rec Commission meeting. That went to Mayor and City Council for review, and their recommendation was to keep the striping of the courts as was at the time, which was the 6 courts. So since that time, there has been discussion of eliminating 2 courts for pickleball, have them overlaid on the 2 tennis courts, and just have 4 pickleball courts, which is.
So basically, the reason that was created that way was the new pickleball court, or the pickleball courts would be actually designed so that the back of each court would either end at the net, the tennis net, or the fence on either side. That way, you would not have the unsafe condition of pickleball courts going into the other court.
Right. So
Janet, something we don't have in this agenda packet is the exact recommendation of Parks and Rec, because what Mayor and City Council did is simply accept the recommendation of Parks and Rec, but I don't see what the recommendation was.
It is there, Marty. It's under the meeting minutes for
under the meeting minutes.
It's H1 PRC recommendation tennis courts. I can pull it up and read it.
I don't remember that we said keep them exactly as is. I thought we said we'll keep both tennis courts and pickleball courts at the same place, because we had groups saying it should be just tennis or just pickleball. And
so I can read you.
Yeah, what does it say? What does it say? Yeah.
There's an email from Allison Kirk, who was the Parks and Rec
an email. Oh.
She was the Parks and Marina administrator at the time, to Alice Erickson and Anne Marie Townsend. Recommendation, this is regarding the February 10th agenda. Recommendation to council to keep the 2 tennis courts and add the blended lines, parentheses, 6 pickleball courts, close parentheses, to the tennis court facility with the addition of windscreens.
Right.
Additionally, recommended that the actual pickleball layout recommendations and input come from the pickleball community and GMB engineers to find the best possible layout solution.
Right. Okay. So it didn't require that they be kept exactly as they are today, but it does call for both 6 pickleball courts and 2 tennis courts.
Correct.
So because I see 2 drawings here. One is, I guess, is essentially what it is today, and the other is with the 6 pickleball courts kind of parallel to the tennis courts, and lined up that way. And I think it's what Barry was just describing, I think.
Well, the whole idea with the way, as we discussed this with the city engineer, the whole idea of doing it this way is the pickleball courts run the same way as the tennis court on either side of the net. And therefore, from a safety perspective, you don't have pickleball balls going into other courts.
My point is that I think this layout is consistent with what the Parks and Rec recommendation to City Council was, and consistent with City Council saying yes.
It is. Well, we know that.
Yeah.
We know that.
It isn't. If the recommendation was to keep the 6 pickleball courts and the 2 tennis courts, by aligning the pickleball courts with the tennis courts in terms of the axis of play, you only get 4 pickleball courts, and I think
there's 6 drawn out on this drawing. There's 6 drawn out on this drawing.
Yeah, but you can't play 6 games. It's either going to be 2 or 4. You can't play 6 games.
Are you saying this the second drawing in the packet, the way the pickleball courts are laid out, you couldn't play 6 games at once? Or are they too close together, or what? Is that
no, it's impossible. They're on top of each other. They're lined on top of each other.
This is Charlie, I can chime in. I think you could play 6 courts. One of the problems with the 6 court layout where they're all parallel to the tennis courts is that if you have 4 or even 3 games of pickleball going, nobody can play tennis because the courts will overlap into both tennis courts. So I think the way we bid it was with the 4, 2 on either side of the tennis court nets for both tennis courts. And that was, so that you could have people playing pickleball and people playing tennis at the same time. At least part of that. That was part of the reasoning.
And the other,
what did your previous council vote on?
The prior council voted on,
the prior, sorry.
keeping 6 pickleball courts on top of the 2 tennis courts. And the recommendation from Parks and Recreation was to have the layout configured with GMB and the pickleball community.
Okay. So they did a 6-4. Okay.
So
I don't think City Council was aware of the safety conditions and the equity of play. I mean, the way it's lined out now,
what was it? 6
play.
Was it 6 before, Barry? Was it always 6?
Yes.
Yeah,
it was always
6 now.
If it's 6 now, do you have anything that shows you any kind of an accident or any safety factor that you got to have a track record that shows the reason for wanting to change it?
Well, I mean, they're not regulation sized anyway. So the courts are closer than they need to be anyway. So if you run the court, the pickleball courts perpendicular to the tennis courts, and somebody's playing tennis, you know, every ball that's missed is going to go in the tennis court.
But isn't that the way it is now? Right now?
Yeah, but that's not a safe way to do it. And there's other, I mean, there are other tennis facilities in other places, and they don't do it that way.
So Barry, can I ask some more questions just for my own education? Because I think we're jumping into the middle of this without actually explaining things to those of us who are not as expert. But on the second version of this, they do have 6 pickleball courts. It seems to me they are jammed closer together than they need to be. You know, they don't have them going all the way to the edge of the current tennis courts. If you spread it, isn't there room to spread them out a little more? And would that be sufficient then? And still have 6 courts?
That is concept E. And Charlie, can you explain that one? The as is condition didn't allow for tennis and pickleball play. I believe the concept E would allow for tennis and pickleball play. Is that correct, Charlie?
Well, the existing condition is, Barry's correct in that balls and tennis players and or pickleball players could meet, even if people are playing on one tennis court side. There's three pickleball courts. Mm-hmm. 2 of them are perpendicular to the tennis court.
Right. If
people are playing, the discussion went that if people are playing pickleball on those perpendicular courts, and 2 other or 4 other people are playing tennis on the court that's open, the tennis court that's open, they're just so close to one another that, you know, there's not much separation. That's how the discussion went in terms of safety under the as-is conditions.
I mean, if you have 3 people play, if you have 3 courts playing, I mean, the pickleball courts are almost in the field of play for tennis.
Under the
they are, aren't they, Charlie?
Under the as-is condition?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they're within, 7 or 8 feet of the sideline. So it just gets a little hairy if, we all know how tennis goes. Balls don't just stay within the confines of the sidelines. They get outside of it. And so do pickleballs from time to time.
Have you had complaints, Barry?
I've had people that were very concerned about the safety issues. Yeah, I've had a couple of people say something. Mention that.
Well, I have two hands up, Rodney and then Warren.
Okay.
Rodney, go ahead.
Just as a background, Carolyn, when we addressed this, the pickleball folks asked that they should have, if they could have a dedicated tennis court and dedicated pickleball courts. Mm-hmm. And the commissioners decided, no, we did not want to go in that route.
Not want to take away one court.
And we did not want to take away the tennis court.
Right.
And so the motion was, and I believe I made it, let's just, and the way the courts were striped, there were problems with it. And some complained about the safety issue, concerns about the safety issue. And then the pickleball people expressed those concerns also, because there are tennis players playing in opposite directions. Mm-hmm. So that was a concern. But what we ended up doing, I believe, was saying, look, it's not perfect. There are problems. You could call them safety concerns. We weren't aware of any accidents or anything like that. But so let's just keep it the way it is, with 2 tennis courts and then an overstriping of 6 pickleball courts. Mm-hmm. In various directions. And I believe that's what we voted on. And it was all in favor except one voted nay. And that's what went to the city council. Mm-hmm. And then in looking at it and with a smaller group, which probably, I'll just say it, we shouldn't have done it. We looked at it and said, you know what, if there were 4 pickleball courts, not 6, and the pickleball courts, in other words, each tennis court supported 2 pickleball courts, you come up with 4, and you don't have a safety issue, and everybody has much more room to play. Okay, and that seemed to make sense, and so I think in the conversation we had, that's the direction, I guess, that the engineer got to proceed with the striping.
So you're saying you want to put this back before the council again?
I'm not saying that.
Oh, that's why I'm asking.
But that's what it comes down to. Yes, ma'am, it does.
I have a question.
Marty, wait. Warren was next, okay. And then I have somebody in the chat, and then I'll get you. I want to make sure everybody's heard. So Warren, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I received a call from Peter Rissell last night. He is the chair of the Friends of Canalfront Park, and he was very upset about the plans as they are proposed. I don't know if he was able to get a hold of Rodney. He said he was going to try to call Rodney and speak to him, but I don't know if he was successful. And Peter would like to have as he expressed to me, have an opportunity to discuss the plans with the Friends of the Canalfront Park. And he asked that the voting on this be delayed until he had time to do this.
We really need to come to a recommendation tonight, Warren. All of these meetings have been public, and there was opportunity for all to have input and feedback. So we do, the project is imminent. So we do need to make a decision, whether it's to go back to mayor and city council, or to go back to the original with a new recommendation, or go back to the original recommendation. I have Ann Reed in the chat, who I'm elevating. Ann, go ahead, and then Marty, I will get to you.
Yes, I guess I'm kind of surprised at the direction the discussion is going today, just because ever since this was voted on by Mayor and County Council in February of 2020, many of us in the pickleball community have been making contact and trying to start the discussion on how best to restripe the courts in a way that was in keeping with what was passed at the mayor and city council meeting. We were you know, I know COVID was going on and all that, but bottom line is we never had our chance to join in the discussions. And it seems that a smaller group met and made some decisions. So I was trying to get, you know, insert a foot back into the discussion. Trust me when I say probably the only thing that the pickleball community wanted to accomplish when we were first asked to comment on this matter in November of 2019 was that we did not want these courts that were oriented in the wrong direction. When occasionally tennis players are there and occasionally the balls go in the tennis court, they get very upset. Trust me, we deal with it every single day that we're playing, because the courts that span the tennis net, the balls from that court go off one end into one of the misoriented pickleball courts and off the other end into the other one. So, you know, we're highly motivated to you know, have this courts reoriented. As to what there's room for safety wise, Charlie, Concept E, I mean, technically, this is not what I would recommend, but technically Concept E that didn't pass because it got rid of a tennis court actually could be reinstituted with a tennis overlay over the 4 pickleball courts. And it was deemed safe by Charlie at the time and everybody involved when it was taken to forward for public comment. But anyway, that's not how I would do it. I think when the town and council passed status quo, to me, there's a couple of things that really contribute to what the status quo is. One thing is that if the pickleball community has use of both tennis courts, or when they do, we can have 4 consecutive games going on. Yes, there's lines for 6 courts, but 2 of them are practically on top of each other at each end. So you can't use them at the same time. But if you have 1 tennis court, you can play three games of pickleball. If you have 2 courts, you can play 4 games of pickleball. Another key thing is that if you don't have a net, which a lot of people don't carry a pickleball net around on their bicycle or in their car, then you can still play pickleball on the courts today, because 2 of the courts are played over a permanent tennis net. So in my mind, the things that we should want to accomplish, and I think would be in keeping with the status quo that was passed, even though it's not 6 pickleball courts, would be to have those things: 3 pickleball courts on 1 tennis court. So if you only have the use of 1 court, you can have 3 games going, all oriented in the same direction, which you can see clearly on Concept D. It's very possible. My plan would eliminate a court on one side, thereby avoiding some of the overcrowding issues, and then have 1 court that spans the permanent tennis net on the other court. Thus, you have 4 pickleball courts available when both of the tennis courts are being used by pickleball. You can play 3 games of pickleball when you only have 1 tennis court, and somebody can come and play without having their own net. And that's my recommendation. My other thing would be to choose lighter colors, because the colors that are on the court right now increase the temperature by some 25 degrees. So when it's 90 out, we're playing on 125 plus degree courts.
Thank you, Anne. I just want to clarify, you're looking at the as-is concept, and are you suggesting going to 4 pickleball courts, 3 on 1 tennis court, and then 1 using over a tennis court using the tennis court net?
Correct.
Okay.
So basically take Concept E, take away on the 1 court, it shows 4 pickleball courts, all oriented in the same direction.
Mm-hmm.
It had a fence because they were going to be permanent pickleball courts. So they were going to be divided by a fence. Instead of the fence, it would be the tennis net, because we know we have to retain 2 tennis courts. Take away a pickleball court on the Little League side, I would say, because that's the main gate that's used. And, you know, the different from the design that Charlie submitted with the 6 courts crammed together in the middle. These, you know, one where there's 2 courts on one side of the net, you have to get closer to the fence. You can't be 18 feet from the fence and not encumber on the tennis court on the other side. But it's, if you look at concept D, it's basically where it's very close to that, only you eliminate one of the pickleball courts on the little league side, and you eliminate one on the other tennis court, and have the only pickleball court on that tennis court span the tennis net or use the tennis net.
And under that scenario, how many total pickleball courts are you talking about? 4?
Yeah, Charlie, 4.
Yeah, okay. I think I know. I think I know what you mean. And I think for the commission's knowledge, you're working off a plan I don't think they have. It's one of the original plans that we talked about.
No,
you know,
actually, concept E was attached to the agenda. Actually, pretty sure that's what that one was called.
What's the page number?
Concept E is the as-is condition.
Yeah, concept E is the as-is.
All right, hang on one second. Let me go back.
But I think we can work it from that. I mean, you're talking about just to take the tennis court that's closest to Pilot Town Road, Front Street, take the pickleball court that spans across the net and turn it perpendicular on the park side of that tennis net, and then leave one pickleball court on the Little League side, remove the 2 courts that are either side of the tennis court closest to the basketball court, and just leave the permanent one across the net. I think that's what you're saying.
All right, well, hang on a minute. Let me look at what this one was, 6.
Well, there has also been issues with people wanting to use the tennis wall too. So that.
Right, and that's why I'm saying, I'm assuming the wall wouldn't move.
Yeah.
So the 3 courts would be on the Pilot Town Road side.
Yeah.
And the 1 court that uses the tennis net, which allows visitors and residents alike who aren't toting a net around with them to be able to play. That court would be the one closest to the basketball courts. But all the courts would run in the same direction. Charlie, I know where it's in the, well, anyway, it's the one that caused all the hoopla, but scaled down, 2 less pickleball courts, and keeping two tennis nets. And I mean, you were comfortable with that design back then as far as safety goes.
Yeah, I just, I think you had mentioned concept D, which I'm looking at.
No, I didn't.
Okay,
go ahead.
I just want to make sure I can fit those 3 pickleball courts in. I think I can, but I would need to look at that just to make sure there's enough sideline distance between the park side fence and that first pickleball court on the park side.
Yeah, I think the design I looked at had like starting 7 feet from the outer fence.
Yeah.
7 feet between it and its adjacent, it's the sister court.
Yes.
And that's still, it cuts into the 12 feet between the 2 tennis courts by, I believe, 3 feet or something.
Yeah, like 4 feet, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. But it fits. And it gives us what I consider to be status quo. Pickleball, is a very social game. We're not playing in groups, but there's still a lot of people that are playing in a lot of different places. And the Canalfront's one of them. And this allows, it works both ways as far as the sharing goes. I know maybe some people don't necessarily believe this, but we try very hard to get every tennis player that comes onto the court. We try and free up a tennis court. And if we are limited to 2 courts on any one tennis court, it makes it that much harder to free up the tennis court when the tennis people want to play in what might not be their window. We're all for sharing the property. We just, pickleball is very popular.
So
Janet, Janet, can you let me share my screen? I might be able to explain.
Yeah, I was just going to try and share mine. Let me see if I can. All right, I'm gonna let you share yours, Charlie. Go ahead.
Yeah. Where am I? I don't see me. I just can hear. I know you guys can hear me. I want to share. It's like I'm not really a full participant or something.
I can elevate you. Wait a minute. All right, so you should be now. If you.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so
let me share my screen.
All right.
And Ann, tell me if this is what you're talking about.
Right.
This was an old concept that we had, and I think what Ann's talking about is this court. Can you see my cursor?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
That court.
Wait a minute, hang on a second. I cannot get to you. Why can't I get to you?
Oh. I should just be a member of the commission right now. You should be able to see what I share.
Welcome you, Charlie.
All right, I'll just have to follow the audio because I'm
sorry.
for whatever reason I'm having issues.
Anyway, I think I've got you, Ann, and I think this is what Ann's talking about, having this court here, this court here, and this court here. Leaving this one out, but then the one that's here that crosses over the permanent tennis court would remain. So there'd be 1, 2, 3, 4 pickleball courts.
All oriented in the same direction, correct?
Well, is that what you want? You want them to
Yeah. Because otherwise we have the balls going everywhere.
Yeah, okay. Then I'm not showing the right concept.
Was it B?
There you go. That's it. That's it.
Yeah, okay. So it's this one here, and you probably still can't see it. So
I cannot.
This court, and then eliminate one of these 2 courts, but then have the permanent court here with the permanent net.
May I comment?
Yes, please.
That seems to make sense to me. It addresses the safety concerns that were brought up. It's manageable. You could still have 3 pickleball sessions or courts being used and 1 tennis court being used.
Mm-hmm. And the practice wall is available.
And the practice wall is available. Those are the 3 things that I remember being, of key importance. Now, if we were to do this, do we have to go back to City Council?
Yes.
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 Yes, because
and don't you
was this
also
given to the City Council before? Did they get this scenario?
Charlie,
no,
the City Council?
No, because it never made it out of the commission level to City Council back in January of last year.
Okay.
So, well, I guess what I would suggest is to allow me to prepare the scenario. It's just a matter of moving lines around and getting the courts where they belong. Submit it to Janet. Make sure Ann's good with it. And then it can go to City Council for approval, if that's okay with you all.
Can I get clarification on one thing? Yeah. Are you telling me that, because your discussions it's confusing. Are you saying what we would end up with is 2 tennis courts still, 5 pickleball courts?
4.
Okay, so 1 pickleball court would be overlaid with 1 of the tennis courts. And then there would be 3 more overlaid with the other tennis court?
Right.
Can you see my screen, Marty?
Yeah, I can see it. Which one would you not have?
So one of these 2 would not be there, and I'd probably center. I would center.
So why would you omit one of those?
Because that's what Ann was talking about for safety purposes. And
but if 2 will fit on the other side of the tennis net, why won't 2 fit on this side of the tennis net? I'm just trying to understand.
I think
am I live?
I think the issue was Ann was talking about some pickleball players don't come with nets. So moving one of these 2 over to the other court, they could use that tennis court.
Yeah,
net.
that part I get. What I don't get is why you can't have 4 pickleball courts overlaid over that bottom tennis court. I don't understand why you're taking one of those away.
I mean, I think that was Ann's idea because the pickleball players have concerns about safety as well. Maybe you have 2 courts that are.
And the entrance to the courts is right there on the corner of that court.
Okay, so you're saying okay. Well, that's the first thing that anybody said that makes sense to me.
Okay.
That makes sense. If you have 4 there, then one of them gets too close to the entrance, and then is that what the issue is with having 4 there instead of? Is that what the issue is? Is Ann still on?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So it's twofold. I mean, when this all started, we were hoping for something better than what we have, more access than what we have. What we got loud and clear is that's not happening.
Well, the tennis courts
and pickleball. But anyway, they voted, in my mind, the vote was essentially for status quo. And I'm just trying to be fair-minded about this and say, really, yes, we have 6 pickleball courts, but you can only use 4 of them at one time.
Correct.
So status quo is really the ability to use 4 courts at one time, 3 if you only have one of the tennis courts available, and that people can play if they don't have their own net. And eliminating one of the 4 courts on the one tennis court provides more space for people to move around. When pickleball players play, they got 6 people per court or so. And that was one of the problems with people playing tennis, is it's just disruptive to them to have that many people. So I'm just trying to come up with something that maybe you could get some agreement between, all the parties that would improve the safety and retain the status quo. I'm not going for anything extra. A 5th court would be more than we have today in functionally.
Okay, that makes sense. And if the reality is that you can really only play on 4 courts safely, I think that you're in the same. You have the same idea as the commissioners do, that how can we do it safely? And you're currently really only playing on 4 courts.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even like a little bit unsafe. You can't do it. But one thing that does work with the way it's lined now is it doesn't matter which tennis court you get. You can have 3 pickleball games going on at one time. Under what I'm proposing now, it's really like we hope whoever is playing tennis, if they happen to be on the court where the 3 pickleball courts are, that we might be able to ask them to move over, because we wouldn't have that same ability to play on 3 courts no matter which side we're on, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, and this preserves the practice wall.
Right.
Well, I find this to be a very, very favorable idea. The only question is if we have to go back to city council, what does that do to the project?
Well, we're a little bit up against it, that's for sure, because we've already had the pre-construction meeting. GMB has not been pressing the contractor, and the contractor hasn't, been pressing us, but we're talking about July 12th, which is, 2 weeks away.
July 12th for what?
Council meeting.
Council meeting.
Okay, but the striping is the last thing that you're going to be doing. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, but it would be nice to know before they get started doing anything.
Well, in fairness, we've been trying to get into the conversation since February of 2020, and I think really, I think the council voted for status quo. Yeah, I understand they have to go through the formality, but did they vote on this as the, what did you call it, as bid diagram? Did mayor and council vote on that? Because that goes against, they did vote on that?
Yes, that was approved.
What meeting? Because the one I went to, when I went to, they approved the money, but they still said, everybody's still always telling us, there's plenty of time to talk about the striping later. It's the last thing that's going to be done. We don't need your input yet. Go away.
Yeah, I don't know about any of that, but I know city council approved the bids as they came in.
Right.
So we can't turn the clock and the calendar back. I think we had a very good discussion this evening. I think it is responsive to everybody's concern about safety for tennis players and pickleball players, and it reacts to the reality of the fact that really only 4 courts can be used. So I think that what's been presented here tonight is a solid plan. If we can get this rendition to council, Charlie, for the 12th, and we can make the recommendation from the PRC, I think that, we'll be in a good place to move forward. Is there a recommendation from Parks and Recreation to put this plan as discussed forward?
I put the motion that we accept this plan as Ann described it.
I second the motion.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
I have one question. One question to Charles. The only permanent nets that are going in are the tennis nets, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so Rodney, your motion is to put forward the layout of the pickleball and tennis courts as discussed tonight.
Yes, with 3 pickleballs over the court near Pilottown Road and 1 pickleball court over the other tennis court.
Using the tennis net.
Using the tennis net, right.
There. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Any other discussion on this item?
Yeah, I think it's imperative that we have a good drawing presented. I think part of the problems with all this is we haven't had good drawings and we have very vague discussions about what everybody's intending, and it makes it hard to talk about it.
I would say the drawings are fine. There's just too many of them.
Right.
Yeah.
I think drawings are good, Charlie.
Charlie, the drawings are
good
fine.
Drawings, Charlie.
Wait a minute. Let me start talk. The drawings are fine, but they are not always presented to either the Parks and Rec Commission or the Mayor and City Council in a way that makes sense. And even now we have one in front of us that doesn't, the drawing does not match what you're telling me. You're telling me here's a drawing, but we would do this.
You're right,
and this. It's different.
Marty,
so that's almost impossible.
That option yet, so
okay, Marty,
I'll get that done.
The drawings are fine and they generate a point of discussion. What we discussed tonight was a variation on this particular layout, which I think we've come to agreement on. There will not be pickleball courts on the basketball courts as shown in this rendering.
Agreed.
Okay. Any other discussion on this before we move to the next?
What about colors of the stripes? Is there a preference from the pickleball community for color recommendations?
Well, I had read that the light gray is like 25 degrees cooler than the dark green. So it gets very, very hot out there.
I think it's talking about the stripes, not the color of the surface itself.
Well, stripes don't really.
No.
Yeah. Contrasting.
I
the
don't
red
know at this
blends
time
in.
we can't change the color of the court itself. Is that correct?
I think you're probably right on that, Ed, because it's probably already been ordered.
Right.
Yeah, that's long delivery items. Yeah.
Charlie, does this new plan require a change order for the contract?
I don't think so. We'll run it by the contractor though.
Okay. Okay. And I have an offline question for you too about the basketball courts, but
okay.
We don't need to do that here. So, okay. Thank you everyone for your input and discussion. Thank you for sharing the screen, Charlie.
Okay.
I couldn't have gotten that other, that rendering up because I didn't have it. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. So our next agenda item under new business, item E1, we have presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding renaming Beach 1 and Beach 2. Kay, I'm going to turn this over to you. This is a very preliminary discussion and the path forward if the commission so chooses. So, okay.
Thank you. I'll keep it brief because I know everyone's tired. To me, this is a very important part of the beaches becoming part of the city's park system, is coming up with appropriate names. I'm proposing to rename Beach 1 as Savannah Beach, giving it a directional name that will help visitors find their way. But Beach 2 provides a real opportunity to combine renaming with the telling of its history and perhaps honoring an individual. Beyond renaming the beach, perhaps we could have a plaque or a tri-panel educational sign, such as at Zwannendale Park, erected to tell the story to beachgoers. With this in mind, I've spoken to Andrew, the prior liaison, and current liaison, Carolyn, with Janet, with the mayor. I've spoken with Trina Brown Hicks and asked to be placed on the agenda of the July meeting of the Lewis African American Heritage Commission to gather their responses to this idea and to give us direction. I have spoken to Janice Clemens, archivist at Lewis Historical Society, to see about gathering stories, photos, what we can find on this history and to move forward from there. So I think if everyone agrees, this is the way to move forward. I would make a brief presentation to the Lewis African American Heritage Commission in July. That group would deliberate and discuss and get back to us. If this is something that they want to do, which Trina Brown Hicks indicated to me that she was really pleased to be contacted and asked, I'm hoping that they do want to do this, then that commission would come up with a proposal, and with Parks and Rec, we could have sort of a workshop session, talk through it, and then come up with a recommendation to mayor and council, who will take action as the members see fit. So this is my plan for the moment. I don't know how everyone else feels about it. I'm excited about it. I think it's a big deal. And I think this could really be extending the historic part of the city much farther. And I'm excited to see what everyone thinks. Any thoughts?
Open for discussion. Candace?
I like your plan. It sounds like a very nice approach to include members of the city in terms of their perspective on what an appropriate name would be, and perhaps someone to honor or something to honor. I think it's a great way to proceed.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's a good
Thank
plan.
you.
Yeah, it's a great idea. It's a great idea.
Thank you. I'm excited, and I mean, I know I don't really have a budget this year. Next year, I'd like to come up with some sort of sign plan, because the biggest sign when you pull into the beach one says metered parking. So it would be nice if you said something
That's friendly.
different, right? But I need to have a plan, so you're not overly signed, but properly signed. And then also just this historic aspect of it, I think, is a really exciting opportunity. This is a big deal. I often hear people say, "Why is this beach here? Why is this beach separate? I don't know, but I love it here." And it's a story that's waiting to be told. So I'm hoping the commission, the Lewis African American Heritage Commission, will feel the same, and we can work together to come up with a great plan.
Excellent.
Is there any discussion on the recommendation for the Beach One directional naming of Savannah?
Anything's better than thing one and thing two.
Yeah, I agree.
Metered parking.
Well, right. And to be honest, I think because of the existence of Beach Two and sort of not knowing how to handle that, that's why it's so clumsy and strange. And I think rather than just having this unspoken thing, it's like, well, let's speak about it. Let's tell the story and let's learn from it.
Yes.
The name Savannah Beach is not offensive or anything. I just think it would be interesting if the historians would have ideas on another name for that beach too. I don't know. I think it'd be interesting to hear ideas.
Well, as we move forward in this, it may have to go to a public hearing, so I'm sure we'd get ideas there, but this is just preliminary discussion, so it sounds like everybody's thinking it's a good idea, and Harry has his hand up. You have the floor, sir.
I'm hearing everything, and I think it's all good ideas, but I wondered why beach number 2 is going to be the named beach. That has a connotation of second beach. And I think both beaches should be named. And I think consideration should give to naming both of them. I mean, they're really both Savannah Beach or Cape.
Well, except Beach 2 was the segregated beach.
It was segregated.
So to tell the story of how this happened and what this meant, and
I get that. But we're also saying Beach 2 is the one we're going to name. It's still second.
Well, no, I think there is a proposal to name Beach 1 as well.
Right. I was thinking Savannah just because people can't find the thing. And so you do end up just saying, drive down Savannah Road until you hit the metered parking sign, go beyond it. So if there are other ideas, I'm certainly open to it. I just don't want it to be endless, and nor do I want it to end up frankly, like the whole pickleball tennis thing. I would like us and not go there emotionally, but to kind of come to conclusions together and work together and not have it get so hostile and difficult.
So Net Real Beach is out, right? Take that off the table.
Right.
Well, what I was asking, I wanted to confirm, and I confirmed with Denise Clemens at the Historical Society that the Net Reel was never at either beach. And one of her suggestions, and something I'll be working on, is to double check ownership. I don't know whether the railroad ever owned what's now Beach 2. That's going to take some digging, but I think it's a good idea to look into it. I had asked her about the net reel because it kind of made me think of, I don't know if anybody's been to Coquina Beach in Cape Hatteras. They've got a shipwreck of the Laura Barnes is in the parking lot. And so when you pull in, you can see a shipwreck. So I didn't know if there was something like that available, but she said, no, it was never there.
Any other comments?
I think it's a great idea, and I encourage you to proceed as you have envisioned this process.
Thank you.
I think you should put out both names. Put it out for both names, not just the one beach. I think you should get some input on both.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Okay.
Excellent.
So at this point, I don't think we need to have a motion. Kay, you're on the agenda for the African American Heritage Commission already, right?
Yes, for the 15th.
Okay.
At 6 o'clock.
So then you'll have some information for us at the next Parks and Recreation Commission, and then we can see what the next steps are from there.
Yes, I'm hoping we can get this all done by the end of the year, realistically speaking, and maybe earlier than that. But I'm hoping that way, when I have a budget next year, I can start spending and getting some nice signs and maybe some of, a historic display together. I'm also hoping when the public reads about this, maybe people who have photos, family photos of the history of the area wouldn't mind contributing them, or we could make copies. I think that would be, or stories if they have something to contribute like that. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kay.
Thank you. That's a great idea.
That brings us to the end of our agenda. If there's nothing further, any other comments, questions? Then do I have a motion to adjourn?
Rodney.
Rodney, thank
Second.
you. Second, Barry, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing no one opposed, it is 8:48 and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Have a great night.
Have a great
Bye.